Hey, welcome back to Global Environment. We're still talking about global warming, and I want to show you some other bits of data that confirm to most scientists that global warming is occurring. All right. This first slide here shows that another thing we can put in our toolbox besides measuring temperatures using thermometers is using satellites. And this was a really exciting development in the early years of climate change and measuring it. And some of the first satellites that were put up from NASA, there were some interesting stories to go along with it. So one of the first satellites that went up, and we'll look at this slide here, initially, and you can see this is the atmosphere over here, the depth of the atmosphere. The original data initially showed cooling. And the funny story is that there was a teacher in England, a math teacher, who grabbed hold of this as a project for his clever students. And they played around with the data, and they found out, in fact, NASA had made a mistake. They hadn't calculated the fact that the satellite, its orbit will kind of recede, decline over time because of friction. And that really impacted the measurements of temperature. So they called up NASA, told them they had done a boo-boo, and they adjusted for it. And after that, it actually showed warming. So initially people were like, there's no global warming, there's cooling. But this reinforced it. It's kind of a funny story, too, about how any old person with half a brain can come up with a smart idea. All right, so what is some other data that's available that shows that there's probably global warming? Some of it that's important is related to sea level rises. And you can see in this graph here, over time, sea level has increased quite a bit. And you can see those trends over time. Now, this other line here shows that if we just include the most recent data, the slope is even greater, suggesting that if there is an increase in global warming, it's accelerating. So that's important. And again, one of the major problems with global warming is if we lose the ice caps, the sea level could rise, many, many feet and really flood some of the most populated areas in the world. Okay. Some other data that's available is that glaciers are melting all over the world. And most of the world's glaciers are receding. That's important not only in suggesting to us that global warming is happening, but also because a great number of people, especially around China and Southeast Asia, get their water from glacial meltwater. So this is an important thing for them. There's also more recent satellite data. It was demonstrated a few years ago that large amounts of ice were disappearing from western Antarctica. There's been portions of those glaciers that have fallen off into the ocean, and we need to keep a good eye on these. In Greenland, where a lot of fresh water is held, there has been it's been demonstrated that there's an increasing amount of ice melt loss, and you can see that especially around the coast here. These areas are melting, we're losing ice, but in the center there's an increase, and some critics have suggested, again, there's no global warming because of that increase, but that's actually due to the fact that the temperatures are increasing. And because of increased temperatures, the air can hold more precipitation. So you would expect this. You'd expect melting on the sides of Greenland and increased accumulation in the middle. All right, some other data that's become available is through modeling. You can see in this graph, this is some model data that suggested that we should see upper atmosphere cooling. And that makes sense when we think about it. If heat is being held near the lower atmosphere, you'd expect cooling. Now, after these predictions were made using models, We actually saw this experimentally. We saw that in the upper atmosphere we were getting cooling, so confirming our prediction. So again, more evidence that something's going on. Okay. There have also been studies that have shown that seasons are changing, organisms are on the move, they're responding to global climate change. Now we're going to stop right there, and we're going to talk about mainly long-term implications of us using CO2 especially, and using fossil fuels over time. What could it mean for the future? So I'll see you next time.